It's 2 o'clock. Welcome to another awesome Millage Mondays, session two. Today we're going to talk about infographics and library data, little tips and tricks, some training materials, how to get to our extensive collection of library data that we have available to you. So I'm Joe Hamlin. I'm not even going to try the whole title. I'm the library data coordinator. I also do state aid and penal fines, and it's a whole thing, the title. But we're going to go as the library data coordinator today. Um, and we're going to talk today about infographics and Michigan Public Library data that we have available. Hopefully you're seeing my screen. My contact information is there, hamlinj2 at michigan.gov or 335-1501 is my phone. So more about what we'll cover today. So I want to show you the common infographic tools we use here at the Library of Michigan. You're probably familiar with a lot of these. You use them yourself. Some tips and tricks on what makes a good infographic and some great training modules available. And then really the meat of this is getting to where you can get the data that you can use to build those infographics. And we have a whole lot of it. So pretty much at the Library of Michigan, we use three tools: Canva, Pictochart, and Adobe Illustrator. Now, based on preference, for a quick and easy infographic, I tend to lean toward Pictochart. I know a whole lot of the folks that I work with lean more toward Canva. Uh, they're, in my opinion, they're pretty similar, but I did lay out some of the pros and cons for each. And then Adobe Illustrator is the industry standard. We have that here too. It is definitely the most expensive of the options and has the steepest learning curve. And really, when you're using Adobe Illustrator, you want scalability. You want to be able to pull vector graphics, which may not be that common, but it's great for creating something for print. It does really, really well at that. So for Canva, it's very user friendly. There are tons of templates out there, a lot of free templates. The paid version gives you even more templates and tools to work with. There's a lot out there. They also have the accessibility options that you'll need if you're going to take this infographic and post it to a website. You can click on everything you add into the Canva, your infographic or whatever you're making in there, an advertisement, whatever. You can right click and add the alternate text. It has some other options so that it is uh, able to be read by a screen reader for folks with low or no vision. It's very easy to make an infographic, to turn an infographic into a social media post. We've done that a lot. To straight make a social media post. It's generally very easy to use. I think once folks get into it and start messing around in there and start working on building an infographic, it is fairly intuitive. But one of the drawbacks of Canva for me is there are so many templates in there, which is great. But a lot of folks tend to choose the same kind of templates. So it can kind of get a little generic from one library to another because, not that we all have necessarily similar tastes, but there's enough overlap there that it can start to look a little bit generic. Um, and some of the customizations for coloring and things like that can be a little bit lacking, but it does have a pretty robust free version, and the paid version is fairly inexpensive. Pictochart, I like Pictochart. I got into that a while ago, and I got into it because it does a really great job with charts. I'm a data guy, so I tend to lean in that direction. And I can see some similarities between Canva and Pictochart. I would say the learning curve on Pictochart is just slightly steeper. I don't think it's hard to use. I think it's fairly accessible, but I do think Canva is easier. Um, but for both with both of these tools, you can create an infographic pretty rapidly. The problem with Pictochart is if you're using the free version, when you go to export something, it will include a watermark unless you're on the paid version. And it's slightly more expensive than Canva. Not by a lot, but I think the last time I looked, it was about $10 cheaper or $10 more expensive a month for Pictochart. Um, we do use Adobe Illustrator, like I mentioned. It is the industry standard. and it's great for very complex illustrations, for printing, for those vector files. If you need vectors, that's where you're going to go. We get it as a part of a package, so we do large swaths of the Adobe Design Suite and Adobe Creative Suite. So we have that, and it definitely is the more pricey option. Um, but if you've got someone on your staff that really leans into design, this may be a great tool for them if you're looking to turn out things that not only are you sharing them digitally, but you want a professional looking printout that you're going to hand out as well. One thing that we noticed right off is it takes up a lot of resources on your computer. So if you've got an older computer and you're trying to use Illustrator on it, you're going to face lag time. You might have some freezes. It really is resource hungry, so you want a fairly capable machine to be using Illustrator. Any questions on the three tools and what we use them for? I've got a couple of examples coming up here. And yeah, Claire, I can't see the chat at all. So if there's anything, just holler. So some of the quick tips for us for building a easy to use and understand infographic, you're going to share complex information quickly and clearly. So not a lot of verbiage, more snippets of data, pictures. Um, keep it's basically the KISS rule, keep it simple, stupid. So it's easier to digest. Now, this chart to the right here on the slide, this was made with PictoChart, and it's very simple, easy to read. It does have some text at the top, but there's a picture with each piece of data, um, easy to digest, and you've got a lot of white space there that kind of draws the eye in. And then the other thing is definitely know your audience. The data sheets that I would create are going to be more aimed at library personnel, library folks. You're going to be probably aimed more at the public. So watch your language, make sure it's simple, no jargon, all of those fun things. And I was reading up on more of this. I thought it was 10 seconds, but it's really 8 seconds. When you hand somebody something, you've got about 8 seconds for them to digest whatever you handed them. So make sure your salient points, the most important things that you're looking to convey, are very easy to follow, very easy to find, usually in that top third of whatever you're handing out. We are very, very good generally at processing the visual images faster than text. And again, white space have white space or negative space, some kind of a separation between whatever information you're trying to convey to make it stand out a little bit more. Now, for very, very much more detailed information on this and some great training modules, in Niche Academy, which we provide for Michigan Library staff, there are two modules by Jamie Heiner that will go step by step into creating infographics. She discusses color design, color theory, hierarchy, uh, all of the options, and she walks you right through it. They're great. I highly recommend both part one and part two. And Claire, I was going to say I'll put the links in the chat, but I'll do that a little later when I can see the chat.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm gonna put the link into Niche Academy in there, and
oh,
then
great.
they have
Yeah.
the name, they be able to search it.
Yep. Yep. And I'll later on, I've got the actual course numbers and all that fun stuff. We can add it again. So make sure that everybody's got a chance. So what I do really revolves around the public data that we collect from libraries every year. We have basically, we have a rarity. The Public Library Survey, the federal version, and our annual report state aid application has a very, very high response rate. It's unheard of I mean, for us, it's tied to state aid, so we expect a very high response rate. But nationally, with the Public Library Survey, which is where our data ends up going at the federal level, also has a 98% response rate. So it's a fairly complete data set. It's really a data census more than a survey. And we're asking, I'm sure some of you are very familiar with this. We're asking about all the activity that happened in your library as of your last fiscal year. We're asking about income, expenditure, collection size, collection use, programming, all of the things that you've done over the year. So what we've done is to get to this information, we've got it really in two ways. So for the public and for anybody who wants it, we have those on our website at michigan.gov/library statistics, and I'll show that in a second. But that gives you all of the data for 1 year. We also have 30 years worth of data in LibPass, where a library director or library staff that has a LibPass account can go in and create a custom report just using the elements that they're interested in. So I'll take you there in just a second. Okay, so it's a multi-tab sheet that you can see here, and I'll open this up for you. The pro is it's available for anybody who has an interest. Anybody can get in there and look at it, but it's all of the data elements. It's every question on the survey, um, almost every question. We removed the stuff that has PII, so that's not in there. But everything else is in there in this huge Excel sheet. But again, it's only 1 year, and if you want specific elements, you have to go in and remove data. Um, Rather than just coming from a point where you're creating custom data at the beginning and just looking at the data elements that you want. So for LibPass, it's right off of the counting opinions page that you use to fill in your annual report every year. It's got all of the data in it since 1997. Anything we've collected since then moving forward is in there and is available to pull out as a custom report. And there are so many options on how this data is exported. You have different charting methods, you have different report types. I'll go through all of this with you. The cons to it is one, you have to have a login. So you're going to be a library director or a member of your library staff that your director requested a login for from me. So generally it's library directors. Although if a library director contacts me and requests so one of their staff members has access, we can set them up with a username and password. So let's get into the actual places where these things live rather than just showing you the slides. Although I did create the slides, so it does have all of the steps as we move through for reference after this, but I'll go through it. So this is that statistics page, michigan.gov/library statistics, where the public data set lives. So I've got 9 years worth in here, and they're all under these headings. So if we go in and click on Michigan Library, Public Library Statistics, it's going to open that sheet. Let's get that open here. There we go. And when you look through here, all of the information is here. It's got the summary and definitions on the first tab. So you have the definition of exactly what the question is, what the data element is that we're asking for. But when you look in here, so it's all 300 and I believe on this year, 391 out of the 396 libraries participated. And these are all saved in a table format. So you can go through and filter if you just wanted to look at libraries by class or by number of outlets or any of these elements on here with the little down check you can apply highlighting to. The the main issue I see with this is yes, it's all here by tab, but you can only look at 1 year at a time. And you have to kind of go through and adjust what you want to see after the report's run rather than before when you can decide exactly the elements that you want to look at. But that is all available to you. You can save it as your own copy. So that's again at michigan.gov/library statistics. And then if we go back here, I'll show you. Here we go. So this is LibPass. Post my login, you can see it says welcome to Library of Michigan. And to get to the custom reports side for this, you'd go up into reports up here on the right. And it's going to open the manage reports screen. Now for most users, you see I have all of these tabs here. I created those. For you, you'll probably have report. you'll have report templates, published reports, and the plus button. So you can create tabs like I have done for the different areas and different people that I work with on what their different data requests may be if you want to organize that way. So what we'll do is, and I should say this too, if this is intimidating and you want to take a look at some pre-made reports, if when you come to this screen, you'll see that report templates. I've got quite a few in here. Just waiting for it to load. There you go. And you can use any of these to create, to modify, to run, to create your own report. But we've been doing this for a while, so there's a lot in here. So even if you were to look at, let's say this one from 2015, and I open this up, it's going to give us a blue background, which it's telling you it's a template. So that blue background means you can't change anything on here. You can't use the filter tools or anything like that until you save it as a new report. And once we do that, that blue is going to go away and it'll be white, and we can change whatever we want. This is good because if you create a report that you think you're going to use again, you'll see here this is a trend report, and it's got a time period 2012 to 2009, which is way out of date now, but all I have to do is adjust the time frame, and now it's a fresh report again. So any of those templated reports that I've created, feel free to save as a new report and adjust them any way you'd like. So I just want to make sure everybody's aware that report templates is out there and it's available. I think I've got well over 100 in here, I believe. Um, so a lot of these reports get to be a report template because multiple people have asked the same question, which is fine. So we'll use a report template because we figure if someone has asked it, there's probably 5 people who haven't asked it yet. So it's in here for your use. So let's go through. This is the more detailed part, but let's go through creating an actual report. So when you're in your report tab, you'll see right below the tabs, create report. So I'll click on create report and I'll pick my collection and I'm going to use public library survey. That's the most common. That's the annual report, state aid application that we collect every year. So I'll select that and I want to look at the most recent 2025 for you folks will not show up. It'll cut off at 2024 because this report is locked and ready for display. The 2025 I'm still working on right now. So I select my collection, I select my period, and now I'm going to name it something because if you don't name it and save and start building your report, after a while in your report tab, you'll have a series of reports named unnamed report. So I'll name it Millage Mondays and I'll save. And you can put in a description. It's optional, but if you like a little note, so when you're looking through your report tabs, you know exactly what that report contains. You can type it there and save it. We'll start with building just a standard table report. We do have a lot of options on what we can build, but we'll start with the table. It's the simplest. And I'm going to go, just for me, I'm going to go into options here, and I'm going to take my location off. Because the Library of Michigan is the parent of the data, if we include Library of Michigan and want totals, it will include the Library of Michigan total, which is going to be the aggregate of all of your libraries. So for me, I don't want that checked. For you, definitely keep my location checked. Save that. And now here, moving down the page, you see locations in blue. I can go in and if I'm looking at very specific libraries, I can go in and add those locations. If I don't touch this filter, it's just going to include all of the libraries. So moving down, this is where we get to adding things to the report, actually building the report. Under group, you'll see all of the groups are in order, the same they are on the annual report that you complete each year. So everything is in that same order. So if you've done the annual report for a few years, you know part two is outlets, part one is your administrative entity, and then you've got your library services and your income. All of that is laid out in the exact same way. So I'm just going to grab a few to start with. I tend to always bring in library class. So I'm going to scroll down and I see library class under part one. I click on it once. Whoops, once. Scroll down and I hit add over here on the right. And you'll see that this area that was blank now has a data element in it. And it tells you it's from part one and it starts building your order. So that's number one. We can go in and change the order if you want data elements in a different order to make it easier for you to navigate the report once you've ran it. That's not a problem. It's just another option. Also, when you see a long bar over here, it means you've got a drop down filter. So I can click on that. And if I want to limit it to a certain class, or if I use control, I can do a couple of different classes and hit update. You'll see 1, 4, and 6 are what it's going to pull from for this report, but we're gonna grab everybody just to build this really quickly. Um, Another important thing, you can't break this. So feel free to play around in it as much as you like. It's it's not gonna to there's nothing you can mess up in here at all. So we've added library class. We're talking millages, so let's go down to operating income. So grabbed operating income, and now all of the data elements under operating income are going to show up. So you can choose what you're looking for there. In part five, there are subtotals fields. So that's your subtotals for your legal service area. And then it lists your contracted and the subtotals for contracted before we get down to total government income. So I'm just going to make this simple. I'll look at total local operating income, state, federal, and I'm holding the shift key down to get multiple elements at once, and we'll add those. And you'll see they'll show up over here. So now they're there, and you can see they're in order 2, 3, and 4. And I'll grab one more. Well, let's just stick with that for now. That's pretty easy report to build. And I'm going to save it mostly out of reflex because it saves it every time you add a data element, but we have the save button there as an extra security blanket for all of us. And now all I'm going to do is run the report. So from last year, this is the data that was reported by the libraries. It tells you it's got 397 locations in it. So with a set of locations that big, when I do one of these charts, which you have the option to use for whatever purpose you'd like, this one's going to be kind of useless though because it's got 397 different libraries in it. So you see, as it scrolls down, it's a massively long chart, and by the time we get near the bottom, you're not even going to be able to tell what the value is. So, and oh no, the thing is right in front of. Sorry, I was trying to close a tab, but it's behind this little menu. Okay. So what typically happens is you run the report, you see that you need to make changes. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me cover this. Most of these reports will have an Excel export option, which is after folks run these reports, that's generally that they work in Excel to get the data that they want to drop into an infographic. Um, it's fairly simple. You just click on the Excel. It's going to download over here. When you open it, it's going to give you a warning. The file format and extension don't match. The answer to this box is always yes. If you hit no, it just won't open. But if you hit yes, it'll open your report in Excel. Wow, and it's taking its time today. There it goes. Okay. So basically the raw data, I would never use a set this big. And typically if you were just looking for data on your own library, let me just close that, get rid of that. There we go. You could narrow it down to your own library. And one of the things that I would do if I was just looking at one specific library is I wouldn't necessarily use a table report. I'd be more likely to use a trend report so you can see the longitudinal data over the years, what's changed for your library. Um, you could also use the graph report, which when you run the report, it creates a series of graphs based on your data elements. I think that's a little less useful for a report like this, but definitely trend reports, trend by PI. PI just stands for performance indicator, which is the same as data element or question on the survey. It's just counting opinions jargon for the questions that were asked on the survey. But there are a lot of options to choose from in here. And what generally happens, the usual cycle is you run your report, you see that changes need to be made, and you're going back to report settings, and you make your changes and you run your report until you have something that is useful to you that you then want to export or use the charting available. So what I mean by that is if I change this and I just want to look at class sixes, um, when I run the report, it's just going to show me the sixes. See, now we're down to 45 locations. And when I grab the chart, it's a little bit, still a little bit long in my opinion, but it's a little bit more usable. And if you right click on these, okay. Oh, there it is. They've moved it down here. You can download it as a PNG. You can swap the axes if you'd like. There's a few options. You can change the default theme, but most of the time, you're going to let the infographic generate the chart for you, or you're going to generate the chart yourself in Excel and move it into whatever infographic you're using. Darn, it keeps moving my tab underneath where I need to. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. But yeah, so there are a lot of options with the software. Let me see here. There, we're back in. Okay. But generally, this kind of gets overlooked because most of the libraries, when they're doing counting opinions, they're just thinking of the annual report. But you can see there are plenty of years of data that you can use to get the numbers that you need to create your infographic. And we're happy to help you with navigating this and getting used to using it. But really, if you were just looking at very specific data elements, this is the place to go for all of the library data that we've been collecting over the years. And I can show a trend report. A couple of the other functions that we have here. When these are checked, it's going to show every element that's checked. If you don't want it on your report at all, you can go over here with the red X and delete it. Or if you might use it later, you can just uncheck what you're not looking for. And I'm just going to grab one library. So I'm going to go into this locations filter and we'll grab, let's see. So when I open locations, it comes up with this filter. So I've got a series of filters here that you also have access to. Or you can go to the search results and pick the library you want to look at. So let's look at Alpina. So it says selected peer. I'm going to hit apply. Yep. And now you can see Alpina populates in there. So now it's only going to pull right now. Do this and we'll just pull the local government operating income. Save that or total local income. Save that. And I'm going to turn it into a trend report. And we'll look from now. We'll go back 5 years. Oh, I did not adjust that. There it is, just on the bottom. Ah, I don't need library class. So when I run it, it's just showing me the income situation for Alpina over the last 6 years. And I've got some charting here that I can use. Can change that to a line chart, swap the axes. This one always struck me as odd, and we're working with the vendor right now, but it's got the most recent date going back instead of reading from left to right. It's almost like it's reading right to left. Um, but for something like this, I probably wouldn't use this chart anyway. I'd download it into Excel and create my own chart, or I'd download it into Excel, and in some of the infographics tools like PictoChart, you could grab that data and put it in, and it'll create a chart for you that you can then use for an infographic. Sorry, Claire, I'm really flying through this. I use it so much that it's I don't know, easy to talk about. I guess. Does anyone have any questions on actually getting the library data? This is available to all of you, um, either through that Excel sheet that has everything, or if you're library director, um, or library staff, you could get a login and create these on your own. As with the infographics tools and pretty much any other new software, going in and touching it and using it. Um, this one is, I think it's fairly simple, but I've been using this for years at this point. So if there's any blind spots that I'm missing, um, please feel free to speak up, because some of this is, at this point, it's kind of second nature for me in this tool.
I can tell you if you haven't done it, I would go in and play with it. I
Hmm.
actually have been able to get reports out of it, and I am not a data person like Joe. So I figure if I can do it, you can do it. The template is really easy, especially once you get the hang of it. And it's nice to have them all saved. So I would strongly recommend that you play with it, because one of the nice things is compare your library to other libraries.
Yes.
So if you're
Yes.
getting a millage and you have other libraries close by and you have, maybe patrons who, question, well, why does this library have this? And you do not, then this would be one way to answer one of those questions if it's something you get asked all the time.
Yeah. And one of my most popular reports requested, there's definitely a template, a couple of different flavors of template for this, is when folks are looking to um, compare their salaries with another library, or they're looking at hiring someone and they want to know what the kind of the going rate
Mhm,
is. Um, because you do have the ability to grab this by county, you could
mhm,
look at the libraries all around you. You can compare yourself by operating income.
mhm.
Um, there are so many things available to you in here.
And that could be a valuable thing to compare by operating income.
Yep,
Because again, if you're going for a millage and you're in an area of lots of neighbor libraries that are similar to you in terms of population, or you say, okay, this is how much we're operating on, and next to us in this township is operating on this much. So, a lot of people, voters especially, have no idea how libraries are funded. So
right.
being able to provide them some context could work in your favor, right? If you're trying to, especially get more money, to show that, what you're asking for is not unreasonable.
Right. And we collect current millage information on this report. So that's current as of the day folks are filling out the survey. So generally between that October and no and February timeframe. So it's reasonably fresh data when I release it in June, following that February date. And you can look and compare yourselves. You could add, of course, you could add county just so you could get the libraries around you. And I'll show that. But you can also select these millage questions, and it'll show what everybody around you is doing millage wise. Anytime in fact, let's just do that real quick. So we'll go back here and grab county. I used to have these memorized. Number 14 now. We'll add county in. We'll take the income ones off. We'll leave them on, but we'll ask them not to display when we run this. And then we'll go down to millage information. And I'm just going to use shift to grab all of it, because you're able to record at least three millages on here. Most libraries, you'll see a lot of blanks in the third millage area, but some, definitely have two. So, okay, so now I've got all locations selected. I've got all of my millage questions, and I'm going to pick a county. So again, whenever you see a long box like this, it means it's a drop-down menu. If you see two boxes, you can do a range, which is very helpful for operating income. You know what you brought in that year, set the operating income range to 4 or 5 thousand below and 4 or 5 thousand above to get an income cohort that you can look at, compare yourself against. But right now, we're just going to go by county, and let's go with trying to figure out a good one that doesn't have two, maybe Allegan. Whoops, let's do Allegan County. And you can do multiple counties too. We can do Allegan and Leelanau. And you see they appear in your filter menu. And then when you run it, oh, and I've still got it on trend. So let's go back to table and we'll just look at last year for table. And we can run that. So you can see all of the libraries that reported, and you notice it's just the 15 libraries because we limited it to Leelanau and Allegan. But you can see the millage rate that they're levying. You can see when it came into being, and you can see when it expires, if it's in perpetuity or not, what they voted in versus what they actually levied. It's all available. And typically, I think what I would do here is I would use this report to identify libraries by name that I wanted to look at, and then I would put them in that location menu under report settings and take a look at the operating income. So say they have a similar millage rate to you, you select those libraries, it'll tell you what they brought in for operating income. You could compare it against what you've got. There's so many options in here, but it is all available to you. And really, I think that's the best way to get comfortable with it, Claire, is play around with it. Do a couple of reports. In fact, you don't need definitely do that, but explore. I'm going to go back to reports here. Explore the report templates. There are a lot of common questions. There's a salary report right there. Um, you might find a lot of common questions that other libraries are asking that you can come in and make your own. So, and again, if you were to pick one off of this list and those are all going to be new. Let me go back a little bit. There's a good one. So I grabbed this salary report. The only thing to remember is if you're using a table report like this one, is just to adjust your period. That one's 2014, 2015 was the when it was saved, that was the last year looked at. So you can just change that to again, you won't have 25, 26 yet, but you can change it to 24, 25 and get the current data. So what what I've done typically is I'm looking at big numbers. I want to see what everybody did all together. I want the aggregate for how many checkouts we had and how many reference questions there were. And you can do all that here too if you wanted to compare. Well, you could compare the whole state or you could compare your county. In your county last year, libraries circulated this much material and your library circulated X percentage of it. That might be something interesting for an infographic. Or just go in and find, you'll already have your numbers from filling this in. You could go in there and pull them back out again if you don't have them recorded somewhere else to create those infographics showing what you did last year. Hey, we're looking to renew our millage. This is the kind of service we provided you last year. This is how many people came in our door. Um, I would caution some things. I wouldn't generally use card holders. I'll tell you that from what I see, the larger the population around you is, the smaller the percentage of library card holders. And generally, it's because you're in an urban area with a lot of different resources around that the public's going to use. I do notice in rural areas and in the smaller areas that um, cardholders will approach 60, 70%. And in some, there's a few you'll find that there's a specific arrangement with another library. They might have a reciprocal borrowing agreement where they actually go over 100%. what I mean by that is they have more card holders than they do in their entire served population. And the libraries that work with Tattle, for example, with Traverse Area District Library, for example, it's a prime example of that because anyone who holds one of their cards also holds a Tattle card and vice versa. So all of those Tattle card holders are card holders also at Interlaken, Fife Lake. So you'll see it's well above 100%, which can throw people off, but it's usually when you see it above 100%, when you see it above 90%, there's some kind of a reciprocal borrowing agreement, or they're working with a local school and every student gets a card automatically. Um, some of those kind of agreements.
Joe, there's one question here.
Yeah.
It says, do you have a template for comparing salary for a certain position?
So I have a template that compares salary across all of the positions listed. So what you could do there is let me open one of those up. So now you could create your own with just the position you're interested in, or I'm going to save this as a new report. Like I said, we're going to make this blue background go white, which means we can do whatever we want with it. Right now, I can't adjust it as a blue. When it's got the blue background, all you can do is run it. All right. So here's a salary report from 24. I'm going to change that to 24, 25. And when you go through here, you see all the positions for MLS holders. So your director, your assistant director, department heads, branch heads, senior level, mid level. All you need to do is if you just want to see a specific position, you can uncheck all of the other ones. So if I didn't want to see everybody, and this might be a way to start out until you get comfortable with the tool just to build a template with just the positions you're interested in. But let's look at just a couple here. We'll look at director. There we go. And I'll uncheck the ones I don't want. Unfortunately, there's not a quicker way where you can just hit shift and check and it unchecks everything. It's got to be one by one. But okay, so we've got director and then we'll do non-MLS director, all of their fields. And I'm thinking maybe library clerk or library page. Most folks have pages or clerks or assistants. That one's not too common. Computer tech. There are some libraries that have that, but some libraries have that for, 3 hours a week or less. All right, so we'll leave library clerk and library page. So all of these other ones that I unchecked won't show up when I run this. So yeah, you can go in and adjust the template to to either see all of it or take whatever element you want off of it. You see there. So now we've just got the directors and then the non-MLS director, and then it jumps right to library clerk and library page. And that's for all the libraries. So, oh, I didn't really go into this. If you see the blue charts instead of the multicolored ones, that's going to give you percentages of who's what. Class ones, 19% of libraries are class ones, so 19.7. Um, it's just a different type of charting. But yeah, so you can adjust it any way you'd like. You can even, once you make it your own, if you don't want to, you think you'll never, and some libraries will never have a senior level librarian. You can go over here and remove those fields with the red X. So you see when I came back to report settings, all the blue boxes are checked again. It's because I didn't hit save after I unchecked. Every time you make a change to the report, hit save and it'll record that change. If it's something like, if I delete something outright, it won't show up after you go back through the report settings cycle to come back to make adjustments. But if I just decide not to view something, it'll recheck it when I come back. So if I really don't want to see that, I can save it and it's unchecked here. I run it. It's not going to include type. This is just quick. Okay, quick being a relative term because I didn't expect it to take this long to load. Sorry. But you see type's not there, but when I go back, it should still be unchecked, but I don't want to see it. Yeah, there it is. So yeah, just make sure if you make changes like that, just hit save. If you don't, you'll have to uncheck them again. So yeah, you can absolutely take anything in here and make it a custom report for you. Any of the templates are free to use. Anytime I create a template, it will appear on that list. So generally there are ongoing changes to it. It gets a little longer each time. One thing you may run into if you're looking at, especially with services, when we're talking about programming and the last big change were to digital collections when we were asking for digital collection counts. When we no longer ask that anymore, you'll just see blanks for those years if you're looking at trend data. When you're looking at a common data element, if someone didn't report anything for it, so somebody didn't report their circulation, and that's what you're looking at. When you're up here in options, you'll see that it has null entries checked, which means it just won't include that library at all. So if you're looking for circulation and say Allendale didn't put anything in circulation, when you're looking at all of the libraries that come up, Allendale won't be on the list because there's no data there. Generally, when I'm looking at all the libraries, I tend to turn that off just because I want to see if someone didn't report something I expect a data value for, I can follow up and see what happened. But it does take a lot of the headache out of it if you have null entries checked because if they didn't put anything, it's just another line on the spreadsheet or on the return results that is just going to give you blank information and just clutter things up. So you can also add it to provide totals for you, averages, quarterlies. So I did total quartiles, quarterlies. Come on, there we go. And run this. It'll give me percentages at the bottom. Percentages, geez, totals. Boy, I should have went back to my shorter report. It loads a lot faster. But at the bottom, you'll see eventually total values. Which, if you're running a quick report and you want to say, well, I want to know what my county circulated, how many visits they had, turn the totals on, run the report, and then you've got the numbers right there that you could plug into an infographic. There's no need to download it in Excel. It's just right there for you. Plug that number in, and you've got the data element you're looking for. So we do have all of these other table report types to look at. So if you wanted to look at period comparison, you could see what your circulation was in 2024 versus 2014. It'll just show the 2 years that you grab. Um, well, like you saw with the trend, it'll show all of the intervening years as well. But yeah, if you just wanted to look at every 10 years, this changed, or um, you're creating an infographic where you want to say 10 years ago we did this and now we're doing that. If that's of interest, if you think your audience would want to see that or drive home that in when your millage was new 7 years ago, this is what you got in income and this is what you expended, and then now your costs are way up and here's what we expended last year. You could do that too with period comparison. Um, so PI gap. I really like PI gap because you're comparing one thing to another. So take a look at the most common one for this is the number of programs you offered versus how much they were intended. And it gives you another set of charts where it shows you offered this and your attendance was here, and it's a nice graphical representation of impact. It shows how many people are actually using what you're offering, which I think is good. You could do that with circulation and collection size. Really, the sky's kind of the limit. Anything that we collect, you can pull out of here. So it's definitely worth exploring. Um, I'm happy to help. If you run into a snag, give me a call or send me an email and I can run stuff with you. Or certain parts of the year, I can do custom reporting. Um, Happy to help in any way I can. But yeah, just, you have access to this tool and you can't break it. Play around in it. There's a lot of stuff in here that can be very, very useful to you, especially when you want to show the community, hey, this is what we offer you every year. And, we do it on a shoestring. We're asking for a little bit of a bump so we can provide more service. You have the factual data that you can show them, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we did. Um, I don't know, but admittedly, I'm a data nerd, so this
Hey,
is yeah,
Joe, we have one more question.
yeah.
Wants to know what the publish report button does.
Okay. The publish report button will give you. It doesn't publish it to your page automatically, but oh, I hit it and I didn't do anything with it. Okay, so let me show you what's under the publish reports tab. So what it does is when you hit that, it goes to the publish reports tab, right? When I mentioned when you first open this, you'll see reports, report templates, publish reports, and that little plus button. So they all land there. And when you hit published reports, just want to be clear, it only goes to your published reports. If I publish a report, you can all see it. So because of the way that the hierarchy is set up, with the Library of Michigan being the parent, anytime we generate a template or publish a report, you all have access to it. But what it does for you is it generates a URL that's hosted within Counting Opinions that you can embed to your site, and it gives you a QR code that you can use to put that on materials, and it'll navigate to where the report is stored. So there was a lot of confusion when they first started offering this. Folks were thinking, oh no, it's automatically thrown my stuff out there. Anybody can get to it. They can only get to it if they have the link and you've got to share it with them, or if they have the QR code and you've got to share it with them. They can't go and search for it. It's got to be something that you've actively shared. And I've used that quite a few times on printed materials so they could scan it with their phone and get into one of the reports I'm referencing in a material that I'm handing out. Um, So that's that, but that's all it does. It creates a URL for the content stored on County Opinion server, and then it gives you the QR code to lead back to that content. And you can use that for whatever purpose that you'd like. So we pay for that for you. It's in the contract. So
Your tax dollars at work.
you're a tax dollar. We're the government. We're here to help. Boy, I realize how much stuff I've got in here. Wow. Does anyone want to see anything else we can create in here? Any questions on any of the other report types? I mean, really, really encourage you to come in here and play with this because it's all of it's in here. You also have access to some, if you really want to revisit this, some COVID data. IMLS put out see if I can find it, measures snapshot. It's IMLS outlet. Oh, maybe they took it. Oh, there it is. Electronic measures snapshot. So they did put together a survey of a lot of their clients, and what they reported during the dark times of the COVID pandemic. So if you're interested in some of these questions on that, that's part of a national collection. So you can see what people reported around the country on that. Um, but generally, most of the time, you're going to live in public library survey. I mean, you'll also have access to the cooperative survey if you'd like, and the LBPH survey. Um, and you can create data sets out of those too. But generally, we stick with public library survey. But feel free to explore there too. There's different data elements. It's a slightly different tool. It'll be in the order that their tools are collected, not the way the public library survey is collected. Yeah, any other questions? I will say definitely, I was really impressed. I really enjoyed those infographic training materials. Definitely take a look at these though. Those two modules in Niche Academy, these were very well done. And if you're looking for a step-by-step, here's how to infographic, these are the modules for you. They're about an hour a piece. Well, something like 54 minutes and 56 minutes. So just under an hour a piece. And Jamie Heiner does an excellent job of walking through all of that. And then, remember your data where you can go and get that so you can put the two together.
Okay, anybody have any more questions? Joe, any final words?
Um, just, I'm available. Feel free to call me if you have any questions. We're happy to help you work through using the tools. They're there for your use. And I mean, it, I know a lot of folks will use the Excel sheets, those multi-tabbed Excel sheets, but it is pretty convenient to create your own custom reports that you might return to year after year. Because once you've saved it, if
Mhm.
it's something you're going to create for your board or for your public every year in an infographic, and you want to be able to, of course, you're probably going to adjust the design of your infographic. But if you're using some of the similar information, looking at circulation numbers from year to year or whatever, once you've created that report, all you have to do every year is adjust the year to the new year, and it will generate those new numbers for you that you can plug back into your infographic. So definitely worth creating a custom report, just looking at the data elements you need rather than having to tool through that very long series of multi-tabbed Excel sheets.
Okay, thanks for coming.